The first true subway map Lionel Chin ever owned was printed the year he was born. He bought it in a junk shop off Delancey Street on his 29th birthday because the cover was October 1991, the same month he arrived in the world. The coincidence amused him, but what hooked him was the way defunct lines ghosted faintly beneath the living network, pale blue veins under translucent skin. A resistant layer of lacquer kept the ink from fully fading. So spurs that had been abandoned decades earlier still trembled on the page if you held it to the window. Lionel became obsessed. He haunted estate sales and municipal auctions, hunted down transit pamphlets long removed from the public record, and tracked rumor to its farthest terminal. After 6 years, one closet of his Brooklyn apartment was a library of folded rectangles, linen guides from 1904, wartime austerity printings, psychedelic tourist posters from the 70s. He could recite discontinuations like family birthdays. The pattern emerged slowly. He noticed it one sleepless evening while overlaying high-resolution scans in Photoshop. The mid-century cancellation of the Myrtle Avenue L coincided with a brief, localized newspaper panic about disappearing church bells in Clinton Hill. The 1984 shuttering of the Harbor Loop matched, date for date, a cluster of off-season waterspout sightings never explained by meteorologists. Individually, the coincidences felt like trivia, things to fuel bar arguments or podcast segments. Together, spread across a spreadsheet, they wove a chill up his spine. He was still rational enough to doubt. So, when the Transit Museum announced an archivist-in-residence fellowship, Lionel applied. The stipend was laughable, but the winner would receive a magnetic strip pass granting unrestricted access to every closed platform, maintenance tunnel, and planning record in the Metropolitan Transit Authority. He expected competition from doctoral candidates, but he forgot that New York had long ago bled her public sector budgets dry. Academia had moved on to grant lines tied to climate projects, not urban ghosts. Lionel's cover letter, equal parts cartographic erudition and heartfelt devotion, won. The pass arrived in a padded envelope so thin it felt like a magic trick. A single swipe brought him through barricades most commuters never noticed. Wrought iron gates disguised as ventilation grills, maintenance hatches sporting codes no journey planner displayed. In late November, he spent 8 hours wandering Track X, an extra nameless track beneath the A-line, abandoned since the Korean War. He recorded mineral deposits on the walls that glimmered differently through each decade's graffiti like sedimentary lore. What he did not expect was persistence, the sense that a line once drawn could never be fully erased. He'd felt it in ephemera, but it became physical in the tunnels. Some rails remained polished as if an invisible car still passed nightly. Some platforms smelled of perfume that had gone off market 30 years earlier. His questions became bolder. He bothered the museum staff with requests for closure memos, anything classified or rumored. One rainy Tuesday, an elderly volunteer pulled him aside. Fran Kowalski had worked dispatch during the 70s blackout and wore that history the way veterans wear faded insignia. She slid a manila folder under Lionel's elbow. "I shouldn't," she whispered, her lipstick craning toward the smell of Earl Grey in her cup. "But somebody trying this hard deserves an answer. You want the Transit Chrono Report, Draft 3. Inside was a single memorandum, carbon copied until the letters blurred. It bore no date, only a directive. Any reopening of discontinued lines must follow Protocol A7. Maintain separation between temporal strata. Failure risks timeline merge. Lionel laughed, at first. Nobody wrote memos about time travel in bureaucratic English. But Fran's stare never wavered. "You think it's a joke?" she asked. "I think it's Cold War paranoia, an urban legend. They fired my supervisor the day he asked why we tore out the Harbor Loop." She sipped tea. Next morning, he woke claiming he'd never worked here. Lionel opened his mouth, closed it. "Why show me?" "Because," she said, "City Council is voting Thursday to reopen Orleans Station on the Centurion Spur." She tapped the memo. "That spur is on the list. You seem like somebody who can read a map deeper than ink." The Centurion Spur had closed in 2001 after low ridership and high asbestos. Reopening promised development for Sunset Harbor, a waterfront rezone coveted by real estate barons. Lionel had a folder of petitions about it. Labor groups hoped for jobs, commuters dreamed of shorter rides, environmentalists cautioned about shoreline destruction. Nobody mentioned dystopian timeliness merges. Lionel spent the night scrolling microfiche. He uncovered notes from the original construction in 1957. A contractor's remark, "Subsoil irregular, feels hot to touch even in February." He traced crash reports along adjacent lines, 3 derailments in a row, each involving clocks stopping for 11 seconds in every strap hanger's watch. Local tabloids called them hiccups in time. Then Orleans Station shuttered and hiccups ceased. Thursday arrived draped in metallic winter drizzle. Lionel's pass took him through a barrel-locked door at Lafayette Ave. Behind it, a maintenance stair led toward the prohibited Centurion Spur. At the landing, a riveted sign warned, "Egress to closed stratum, authorized custodians only." He pushed through. The tunnel startled him, not by decay, but by freshness. Third-rail boots gleamed, safety lights pulsed at full brightness, though there was no active power feed on the books. It felt less abandoned than prepared. The last platform before Orleans lay silent. Then Lionel heard wind, but not the ordinary breath of underground drafts. It carried something like sirens, ambiguous, faint, overlapping enough to rattle pitch recognition in his ears. He snapped photos, chalked coordinates in his notebook, and withdrew before a guard shift changed. He wanted data before accusations. That evening he attended the public hearing in City Hall. The developer's lobbyists touted renderings of airy platforms lined with kombucha kiosks. Nobody in the chamber mentioned temporal strata. They spoke in ridership metrics and carbon offsets. Lionel waited for the open mic, palms sweating. When his name was called, he recited evidence. The chrono memo, the derailments, the hot soil. Laughter blossomed from the dais. A council member asked if he wrote for Netflix. He left ashamed yet furious, the standard cocktail of the ignored. If lawmakers wouldn't listen, perhaps proof required magnitude. He sat at a deli counter biting pickles until a plan crystallized. Document a hiccup in real time, link it publicly. Force reconsideration before Orleans reopened. He needed an instrument sensitive to temporal shear. Quantum labs cost millions, so he cheated. Lionel contacted Dr. Ilse Rasmussen, a graduate school friend now designing hyper-accurate LiDAR for subterranean archaeology. The LiDAR bursts at 6 terahertz modulation, Ilse said over encrypted video. Any pocket where time flows differently degrades the return echo. You'll see distortion bands. Can you meet me under Midtown tomorrow? Only if you swear the MTA won't sue me. I'm paying in truth, not cash, Lionel replied. She rolled her eyes but agreed. They convened near the closed 53rd Street interlock at 2 a.m., lugging a tripod case like a coffin. The LiDAR projected violet fans across darkness. The return data drew on Ilse's tablet. Walls, tracks, bolts. After 20 sweeps, a segment glitched. Pixels smeared, timestamps looped. There, Ilse whispered, phase ripple between pulses. Something is bending the heartbeat of photons. They followed the ripple south, deeper into the spur. Soon their breath filmed in air that felt both cold and feverish. At a switch labeled Orleans STH0, Lionel smelled smoke, fireworks mixed with electrical burn. It wasn't in their world. It hung like a memory forced through ventilation. They reached Orleans Station. Its tiling was immaculate. New LED panels cycled service announcements in a serif font no current line used. Next train, CT19, Yuri 0. All boarding must submit ident tags. The signage flickered between English and Cyrillic. A train approached. Hearing it was impossible to mistake. Steel on steel, but the sound rose and fell oddly, as though someone dubbed cassette tape of a subway over industrial machinery. Light clawed the tunnel curve. Ilse froze. What if it stops? Lionel yanked her behind a pillar. The train flashed past, but there was no train. The lights were in absence, a hole shaped like cars, swallowing reflection. As it passed, the air behind them shifted. Posters changed. Where glossy real estate ads had boasted Live Harbor Rich, new ones displayed a ration chart for District 4 aisles, and a propaganda portrait of a faceless sentinel wearing a badge shaped like the MTA logo inverted. The LiDAR alarm screamed, overload hysteria, then died. Ilsa cursed and slapped at the power switch. The station heaved. Dust fell in soft earthquakes. Lionel felt rubber damp under his sneakers. When he looked down, the platform had become stamped metal. The transformation crept from the track edge toward them like frost. He pulled Ilsa and sprinted. The platform's trailing half reverted to tile as soon as they crossed a yellow safety stripe. He glanced back. Where he'd stood seconds earlier, soldiers wearing armored mantles patrolled a concourse patently not their own. One turned. Its visor was mirrored glass, polished to flawless night. Then the vision folded away, replaced by dusty silence. They didn't stop running until Midtown Broadway Station, alive with drunken Friday revelers ignorant of timelines. Ilsa vomited in a trash can. Lionel sipped warm water from a newsstand. She wiped her mouth. "You owe me more than truth." "Help me seal it," he said. "I just mapped a breach in reality. I don't fix rips, I measure them." "I don't fix them either." He ran fingers over the worn spine of the map folded in his jacket. "But the maps know how." She looked at him like a man newly dangerous. "Explain." Lionel unfolded 3 maps on the tiled floor. One from 1957, one from 1991, one current. He lined them so the Centurion spur overlapped exactly. Then he pulled a felt pen and drew the glow he'd seen, a loop curling from Orleans down into the harbor. On the older maps, the spur extended farther, ends at a station named Verdant's Pier. It had never been built in their present. "Discontinued lines," Lionel said. "Each one overlays a timeline where something went wrong. The closure sealed it. Reopening Orleans tears the barrier. That train we almost met. A commuter line from a fascist New York," Ilsa finished. "Or worse, Protocol A7, maintain separation." "So we need to convince the council?" "It's past politics now. The contractors begin de-asbestos Monday. If they power tools inside Orleans, I think they complete the tear." Ilsa leaned against a column, thinking. "Then we sabotage the equipment? Won't stop a determined developer. We must reseal properly." He tapped the map. "I think the seal is the map itself. Cartography is config. When the line is officially removed, the city prints a new map, collective consciousness reroutes, frequency splits. If we can update the digital feed tonight, before Monday, Orleans remains under construction indefinitely. It never reopens." Ilsa frowned. "We'd be forging transit databases. Saving the city from dystopia. Same felony class, for the record." They went to Lionel's apartment. At 4 a.m., he logged into the retired servers of Transit GIS with credentials borrowed from Fran. Ilsa wrote a script injecting a phantom asbestos alert that would auto-renew each quarter. They re-tagged Orleans as structurally compromised, Phase 2, remediation scheduled. The key was time-stamping the update with Friday's date, before the council's vote certification. Government software archiving would treat it as precedent. While Ilsa coded, Lionel drafted an anonymous tip to a tabloid. Leaked report reveals Centurion spur contaminated beyond safe threshold. He attached doctored photos of crumbling girders. Dawn pinked the window panes. But Lionel's chest tightened. Maps alone might not suffice if the breach had already opened. He remembered the platform transforming underfoot. That rip demanded a physical patch. The archival memo said, "Any reopening must be preceded by magnetic weld to all track entrances. Maintain separation." Weld magnetic. Lionel considered the rails waxed smooth, as though still used. Perhaps somewhere, something still used them. He phoned Fran. She listened, silent. "Custodians," she said after a while. "That's who insulated those lines. I can put you on the next shift." "Shift?" "They check lock integrity every full moon. Tonight's same." The absurdity would have floored Lionel months earlier. Now he noted the lunar calendar automatically. He and Ilsa met Fran on the mezzanine of an unopened platform beneath Grand Street. 10 other people arrived in mismatched safety vests. Some looked like plumbers. One wore a ballet warm-up jacket. Each carried a steel briefcase. An organizer, a thin man named Solomon, handed Lionel and Ilsa theirs. Inside rested nickel arcs shaped like horseshoes, coated with ferrous ink and engraved with tiny maps of the line each would seal. "You know Orleans' job?" Solomon asked. Lionel nodded. "Peg arcs every 100 meters along both tracks. Recite coordinate phrases during adhesion. If you hear trains, don't board." He smiled without humor. "Obviously." Ilsa mouthed coordinate phrases from an index card. Longitude, latitude, date of closure, 3 words of a poem. "Why poetry?" she whispered. "Language older than bureaucracy," Lionel offered. They rode a non-public elevator to the spur. Darkness there already felt taut, aware. They moved in pairs, Lionel with Ilsa, Fran and Solomon behind. Each arc snapped onto the rail, then magnetized, glowing faint teal. Ilsa recited, 40 degrees, 40 Bausfafriai, 7 north, 73 degrees, 0.976 west, September 8th, 2001. The river forgets memory. The glow intensified briefly, then subsided like metal cooling. At arc number 9, a horizon pulse sounded. Not just a train, but overlapping horns, like 2 vehicles sharing track. Lionel threw the last arc at the rail. The air folded. He saw dual images, one station plastered with "Mine the drone patrol," the other theirs. He shouted the poem. Light exploded turquoise. When spots cleared, silence settled. The rails were dull again. They completed loopback to the junction. Solomon sealed master breakers with lead. At 3 a.m., the custodians exited. On the street, snow had begun, gentle. Lionel felt loose, drained. He thanked Solomon. "You earned your reflector vest tonight," Solomon said. "But watch City Hall. Paper seals last only until someone edits them." Morning headlines, propelled by Lionel's leak, screamed, "Toxic truth! Hidden asbestos catastrophe in Centurion Spur." Council members demanded inquiries, fearing lawsuits. Developers pivoted to a safer, cheaper ferry option by afternoon. Orleans' reopening went from triumph to dead file. Lionel slept 18 hours. When he woke, he brewed coffee and unfolded maps across his living room floor. He drew a thin red line through Orleans Station, connecting it to every discontinued spur. There were dozens, each a scar crossing the city's underbelly, each protecting a possible ruin. He imagined other collectors in other cities guarding their own networks. London's Lost Jubilee Curve, Tokyo's Shitamachi Loop, Moscow's Phantom Krasnograd line. His phone buzzed, a text from Ilsa. "Lidar cleaned, no more ripple, for now." He stared at the maps. Tranquility should have felt victorious, but he sensed motion under the ink, like muscles flexing beneath a coma-patient's skin. Futures pressed, restless. Fran had told him once, the price of separation is constant signage. He understood now. The city evolved above ground, full of public meetings and votes. But survival below belonged to those willing to read between lines, literally, to guard the hidden grammar of history. He rolled up the 1991 guide, the one that started everything. A warm fingerprint of his remained on the spot where the Myrtle Avenue L used to run. The map felt alive, an oath. Outside, the weekend rush hour built, people tapping phones, children dragging sleds, lovers arguing about dumplings, all unaware that if any one of a dozen obsolete stations reopened, their snow would maybe fall as ash. Their phones demand citizen checkpoints. Their arguments dissolve under curfew horns. Lionel grabbed a pen and labeled a new folder, Deferred Lines. Under it, he wrote, Protocol A8, Public Education, Cartoons, Podcasts. He chuckled. One timeline at a time, he reminded himself. He folded the maps away, but the city's seams whispered still, a lullaby stitched with rail ties. Somewhere deeper than the deepest tunnel, trains without headlights searched for platforms that no longer existed, yearning to disgorge passengers of futures best forgotten. Lionel headed for the door. Snowflakes dotted his coat. He decided to walk uptown, plenty of closed entrances to check, plenty of seals to polish. After all, maintenance never ended.